between Americans and other ethnic minorities who were also looking for work. Harry Anslinger and other political figures at this time started promoting cannabis as a drug used by these ethnic minorities.
By the time the word marijuana came into existence in the United States in the 1930s, it was the Mexican word for cannabis that was not considered hemp. Many Americans were familiar with cannabis extract, usually called cannabis indica, on the bottle. And instead of that, here's this new devil weed from Mexico, which nobody had ever heard of.
At this same time, many newspaper owners and other media giants who were also invested in the lumber industry didn't want a plant that could be used as an industrial fiber to compete with their means of getting paper. Many articles were printed that not only played up the racial tensions, but also the psychedelic effects of the cannabis plant.
And the result was in 1937, this new menace called marijuana was outlawed by Congress, which didn't know anything about it. And of course, there was a great deal of anti-Mexican prejudice during the Great Depression, simply because Mexicans came over looking for work. There was also a great deal of anti-black racism in the Deep South. Cannabis was used by African-American stevedores in all the port cities. There are cannabis cultures growing all around America, and when it arrives in America, it's considered a terrible thing that these horrible immigrant foreigners do, and immediately the result of the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937 was to eliminate marijuana from the pharmacopoeia.
Today, marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug. But back in the 1930s, before the ban, every major pharmaceutical company was selling it as a medicinal product.
This is the way that Park Davis sold marijuana in the 1930s, but it is botanical drugs pressed cannabis sativa, made by Park Davis with a nice picture of their manufacturing plant. They also made a variety of tinctures and other substances that were sold commonly in every little apothecary and drugstore in America. So it is not a new drug. That's the emphatic part of this. This is a drug with medical history that goes back far beyond the founding of our nation.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. All you potheads out there are really going to enjoy this. You can find something other to do with marijuana than get high. It cures cancer, it cures all sorts of diseases. So instead of smoking it, you can internalize it and cure your ills. Now, as you know, in the black community, pot is king. And it's been illegal for all this time, and lots of us have gotten, I know I've been put in the can for having a half a joint. All right? What? So, yeah. I had half a joint.
Not a whole joint?
A half a joint.
That's a roach. Not even a joint.
A roach. It actually took me to the precinct because I had a roach in my pocket. This is like 5 years ago.
That's illegal.
Well, they said...
They can't.
Well, they did it.
Marijuana possession, be misdemeanor.
That was 10 years ago.
I'm going back more than 10 years.
Well, they did it anyway.
They can't arrest you for possession. It has to be in public view. That's the only reason they can arrest you for marijuana.
They put it in my pocket
if it's in
and took it out of my pocket.
And that's part of the illegal search and seizure.
Well, you weren't there to defend me. Anyway, I got locked up for it. And I'm sure a lot of other people have stories about being picked up for marijuana. But in our community, right? Mm-hmm. In our community, we have a chance to take this suddenly illegal drug because we can see it's being talked about and being legalized in another year. Understand the states, New York's, welcome to the show, Leslie Stone. I'm so anxious about this stuff, and I'm so excited about it, because Leslie, you showed me a whole different view of what we can do with this product. And I want everybody, I'm excited about people meeting you and telling about your dedication to educating the community about what medicinal properties this drug has.
Well, thank you so much, Winston. I'm very excited to be on the show today. It has been a very exciting journey, and like you said, I've taken on the mission to educate the communities about getting well versus getting high. It's a whole different mindset.
Very good.
You know, just going back to, you know, the early times when people think of marijuana or cannabis or pot, you know, the first thing that comes to mind, getting high, partying, having a good time. Nobody really looks at it as a medicine or ever think about its therapeutic effects.
Right.
Although we've all experienced them if we've consumed marijuana in any capacity. I remember before it got legal, I just recall a lot of people used to say, I'm getting my medicine. I'm getting my medicine.
Yeah.
Like, that was the term they referred to, you know, outside of saying ganja, pot,
Right.
they referred to as medicine. So the question is, why did they call it medicine before we actually knew it was a medicine? What did it do to them to make them feel as if it helped or alleviated?
Well, if I can give a testimony,
Yeah.
I used to get angry. I mean, whenever I got super mad and I'm about to kill somebody, I smoke a J and I sit back and think about wonderful things. Or I would create different ideas, and it would just cool me out. It was a way to temper my temper.
Well, I think it's a good way to take the edge off. Many
Okay.
people, we refer to it as a way to take the edge off, but I've heard that testimony many times from a lot of other people as well. It's a way to calm themselves if they find themselves in a situation, they're upset, they're angry. So right away we realize therapeutically it calms you, you know, helps to relieve anxiety. And we testified to that before we got here.
All right? And it's good for the eyesight. I mean, you can
Yeah.
see better. I can actually, I'm a cameraman, so I mean, I see 3D when you're smoking.
Yeah,
But
they're
let's talk-
treating people with glaucoma, I
Right.
understand,
Exactly.
with the marijuana. My wife's aunt, who is a cancer patient in Florida, is taking, I believe, the CBD.
Right.
Yes.
And she's doing better. She's got the chemo, she's got radiation, she's taking the CBD, and they don't really understand how she's still functioning because they said she was stage 4 with cancer in 3 or 4 areas of her body. She's not healed, but she's functioning fairly good. You know,
It has enhanced her quality of life.
yes.
One of the things that I've seen since I've been on this journey, a lot of people like the one you just described, especially when they're dealing with some of the severe debilitating illnesses, you know, a lot of it has to do with the actual pharmaceutical drug side effects. My mother, whom I just lost recently, thank you very much. She was my first patient zero, the first baby boomer that I was able to destigmatize. She suffered from many different afflictions, one being cancer. She had chronic pain. She had COPD. She had beginning stages of dementia. She had arthritis, bronchitis. So she was plagued with a lot of afflictions. So she was taking 18 pharmaceutical drugs a day.
That was killing her.
That alone it was. So it was very heart-wrenching to me to see my mother. You understand?
course.
Someone that I know, the
Yeah.
person that birthed me, the one that kind of gave me my interpersonal skills and the way I interact with people, to kind of see hers diminish. And, you know, I would have conversations with her. She was like groggy, you know, speech slurred, you know, she's half asleep. She would sleep majority of the day, hours of the day away because of the side effects from the medications that she was taking.
Chemotherapy?
Yes, she had done some chemo. But the thing was, it was just, it was an overload of medicines. At the end of the day, think about 18 pharmaceutical drugs, with each of these drugs having their own side effects. So I don't care what anyone says. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you have numerous different types of drugs or substances in your body that creates a side effect, and then you're compounding that with more substances that create other side effects, what do you think the outcome is going to be?
You will not die of your immediate illnesses. You're going to die from the toxicity in your body from those pharmaceutical drugs, because they all tear down one area of the body or another. And then when you're mixing chemicals together, you're producing something else.
Exactly.
Well, it lowers your immune system. So
Exactly.
you catch something, you catch
Destroys
pneumonia
kidneys, destroys liver,
Yeah.
you know, and you can die from anything other than what you think you're dying of, you know, and that's the problem.
So
with
let's go
pharmaceuticals.
to Rick Simpson, who, Rick Simpson, I first noticed Rick Simpson must have been late 90s on YouTube. He was producing hemp oil and giving it away. And the police in Canada got on
Yes.
this case, and he would put it on YouTube, and I don't know if it was on YouTube at the time, but it was a lot of fuss at this guy pronouncing a cure for cancer, because I think he went through something personally. But run Rick Simpson, and we'll see the grandfather of producing medical marijuana. That's number one.
It's going to take a few minutes by the look of it.
So this is the sand particles that needs to be filtered out. That is one of the main reasons why we use the filtering paper.
I found that people put so much trust in the medical system. You know, like the doctors tell them they must take chemo and radiation. And sadly, most people will do what their doctors are telling them. But when you look at chemo and radiation, it's really nothing more than madness. This is not a viable, you know, or a sensible treatment to treat, you know, somebody that's suffering from cancer. And when you hear people are dying, you know, like, oh, well, they took chemo and then they got pneumonia and died. Well, the reason they got pneumonia is because they have no immune system left because the chemo killed it, and radiation does the same. You have a much better chance of being cured completely with this, and it only takes usually 60 grams of oil. But if you've been damaged by chemo and radiation, then I strongly suggest that people ingest 180 grams, 3 times as much, to undo that damage that the chemo and radiation have left behind. And then once your body is back in a state of good health, then you just drop your dosage back to, you know, a drop at night before bed. About an hour before bed, just put a drop on your finger. You could take 2 drops. It's really up to the person themselves and what they're comfortable in taking. This is a medicine that you can't overdose and die from. You know, if you take too much, all you do is sleep. I mean, you wake up unharmed. So it's not like other pharmaceutical medications or anything of that nature. Usually, like a maintenance dose would be 1 to 2 grams a month. You're not talking about a lot of oil. And that just protects your body. It acts as a preventative medicine. So I think it's very beneficial that everybody do this. As a matter of fact, you know, when you look at most people today, you know, our bodies are all full of toxins because our environment is full of toxins. You know, we have heavy metals in us. So I think it's actually a good idea, or would be a good idea for everyone, you know, every adult, to go out, and even if you don't have cancer or anything else wrong with you, you know, at present, take a full 60-gram treatment, detox your body, bring your body back to a state of good health, then just drop it back to a maintenance dose, and away you go for the rest of your life. If you want to put your trust in medicine, this is a medicine you can trust, and there's no danger involved. Just make it properly, follow the instructions. Like I said, anyone can produce this. We just changed the filters to speed this up a little bit, but...
Interesting, right?
Get a
Now,
5 gallon
can you
container.
imagine all of Harlem with these little, Leslie can lead us to educating ourselves on how to produce this and how to cure ourselves. Now imagine in New York state legislators are trying to legalize recreational marijuana. Now we all know how to get high, but I'm talking about taking this product and turning it into a cure. You can see how easily it is. Now you can imagine everybody being part of a team and everybody being benefited from selling marijuana, but putting out an oil that cures people of everything, of all their ills. And you get rid of all the drug pharmaceuticals and of any disease on the planet, or even cancer. Now this is exciting, and I've been talking about this for 20 years. My wife can testify to that. And now I've got her on a program with Leslie going to Golden What is
Golden
it?
Hands.
Golden Hands.
Yes.
Tell us
Yes.
about Golden Hands.
Well, Golden Hands is the medical marijuana program that I've created for seniors, or baby boomers.
Okay.
It was inspired by my mother, my
Right.
patient zero. Her and I created Golden Hands together, as I mentioned previously.
Right.
She was my first baby boomer that I was able to destigmatize. And so the mission of Golden Hands is to educate and assist older adults on the benefits of using medical marijuana as an alternative prevention medicine to alleviate chronic pain, sleep disorder, and mood modulations.
Okay.
Okay.
Mood
So-
modulation.
Yes,
Go
we're
ahead.
talking about, you know, all your different bipolar, your mental illnesses. We're talking about dementia, ADD. So this is all mood modulation.
Okay.
Once again, one of the things that people need to be aware of that I like to emphasize is that cannabis is not a cure. It's a prevention medicine. It's preventive, okay? It alleviates, it relieves, but it does not cure. Like anything else, if you take care of it, your body, and you do things before things occur, it prevents things from happening. So now, if you're in a dire state, and then you switch from your pharmaceutical to cannabis, now it will allow you to live a longer, healthier life over time, but it will not cure per se. It can alleviate, and sometimes there have been a number of testimonies where people have had their illnesses diminished, but we will not say that it cures anything.
Well, I have testimonies on tape that people's cancer cells were killed before they went to the operation.
Yes,
They've
but
been
just from record, they don't say it cures.
They don't allow you.
Exactly.
See, the system,
But we know it does kill cancer cells.
true, but to keep yourself out of
Legalities,
lawsuits.
liabilities.
Gary Null has cured people of AIDS and was doing that 20 some odd years ago. He told Arthur Ashe, don't take AZT, they will kill you.
Right.
But they came after Gary Null, you know. But Gary is still on the radio. You have to know how to verbally present what it is that you're doing, because if you say cure, then they're going to come after you. Because number one, you don't have a medical background.
Right.
You're not licensed. It's, you know, and then they make it, and there are doctors who have had to leave this country that we know of. Look at Dr. Sabi.
That know how to cure
Right, to
using
cure.
natural remedies.
Yes.
But they could never say cure. Exactly.
So
Because
if I run testimonies where people say it killed their cancer.
But they're not selling anything.
Okay.
They're just
Well, we're not selling
testifying of.
anything. We're giving
they're
education to
testifying of
people.
what
well,
they.
no, but it's important to put that disclaimer
Okay,
out there
yeah.
to
All right.
make people understand
I
that
understand.
although you should not see anything that says it cures. However, you will get testimonies from people that tell you what it did for them.
For them.
Okay.
And that can't be taken away from anyone.
Okay.
That's freedom of speech.
Right.
That's our live testimony. But
But
from
not a blanket cure. Everybody that has cancer will be cured. You can't, you can't say
make that
you know.
claim.
Okay.
Okay. So it's very important to understand that, once again, this is something that's an alternative prevention medicine. And just kind of going back to the beginning of time, I like to tell people, like, before we had pills and pharmaceutical drugs and pharmacies and doctors by titles, what did we do to take care of ourselves and our body?
Plants,
That's where we
roots,
are now.
herbs,
We're just going back to the beginning of time and kind of taking out some of this modern civilization and going back to using our natural elements. Now, if we refer back to the natural elements, and we understand that there are tons of different plants that we can eat, just like animals that are
Okay.
good for us, and we understand what was put here for us. In addition to that, we must also understand that our bodies, our natural chemistry, allows ourselves to heal ourselves naturally. I think a lot of people have really lost sight of that we have a natural ability to heal ourselves. Now, that process is called homeostasis. Okay? And homeostasis is the ability for the body to balance itself out. Now, if we keep our bodies in balance, then we are going to be very healthy. When our bodies get out of balance, and the way you can understand that better is, for example, when you get a fever, okay? A fever is an indicator that your body is out of balance. So that your temperature spiking is an indication of that. So when you go to the doctor and you hear something like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, these are indicators that your body's out of balance. And what are the things you have to do naturally? Change your diet, implement exercise. Those are the natural remedies.
You know, you mentioned the fever. And right after 9/11, I was working in Midtown. And one of the guys that was on my team, his grandson was very ill. His daughter called from the Poconos. She said, "Daddy, the baby has 103 fevers." He says to me, "Spoon, I got to go." I said, "Go ahead, I'll take care of everything for you." So I said, "Call your daughter back." I said, "Do you have any onions in the house?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Get an onion, slice the onion, put the onions on your baby's feet and put a sock on." She said, "What?" I said, "Do what I'm telling you to do." Your boy has 103 fever. At 104, he's going to suffer brain damage. This is an infant, all right? The damage will be irreparable. Slice an onion. Your father is on his way. It was an hour-and-a-half ride to the Poconos for him. He got home. He called me back. He says, his temperature's 98.6. I said, "I know. That's what it's supposed to be." He said, "Well, how did you know that?" I said, "That's an old remedy that we used. Putting an onion on the soles of a baby's feet." He said, and the onions were dry. It pulled the fever, pulled that fever, and onions are a purifier. If you have a bad cough or a cold, slice some onion and put it around the room, and it pulls the impurities out of the air. As a matter of fact, once you slice an onion, you can't use it the next day. Because what it is doing while it's sitting, even in the refrigerator, it's going to pull any impurities from that environment into itself, and then if you eat it, you're ingesting the impurities. So onion is a perfect purifier, not only for us, but for the environment.
Any stories about marijuana?
Yeah.
Never smoked it?
Never smoked it. I don't smoke anything.
Right. Used to grow in the
But
lots in Brooklyn.
in the lots in East New York where I grew up, marijuana grew, I'm talking city blocks.
Yeah.
And going towards Linden Boulevard, on the other side, going towards
A lot of people didn't know
Flatlands.
what it was.
And we didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
so one day we were in school, and we said, "Something's burning. What is that? What does that smell?" And then we found out when we got home on the 6 o'clock news that the sanitation department and fire department burned, I think, 2 square blocks of land, but it was marijuana, you know. But the thing is
that
that
was the Jamaicans out there.
no, there were no Jamaicans. There were no Jamaicans in East New York in the 50s. Bajans, but not Jamaicans. And but you know, the hemp oil. This country went through a crisis in the early 20s because white people got addicted to cocaine to such a degree that the GDP of the country dropped, because so many people were addicted because you could buy cocaine in the store.
In a pharmacy.
Right, and then they cut it from the store back to the pharmacy, and then they cut it from there to a prescription drug. But everybody was using coca.
Same as marijuana.
Right, and well, it's more potent than marijuana. It's more detrimental to you also, but then they were drinking absinthe in France. So when they saw that they were losing money in terms of the national output, they had to cut back on it. Coming back to the hemp. Now, hemp is a very valuable plant, we know, for thousands of reasons.
Well, I think if you ask me, I believe it's the most valuable plant we have on the planet Earth.
It's a blessing.
Due to its multifacets. You know, hemp is not only a plant that can provide food, it could be used as a biofuel, it can be a textile, it can be used as concrete. I mean, its multi-purpose functions is just astronomical. One could never fathom that one plant could do so much. But I think that just opens our minds to the lack of knowledge and when we know about what nature can provide to us.
Exactly. So what do we do when this law is legalized and we in Harlem here are sitting with a product we well know and have the opportunity of advancing our pocketbooks by selling this drug?
Well, now that's the exciting part of this. It's the green rush. This is the opportunity of a lifetime.
Okay.
I don't believe many of us understand what that entails. This is revolutionary. It's historic. I never believed that I would ever live to be a part of something, let alone participate in an industry from its inception.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's what we're dealing with here,
That's
an
right.
industry from its inception. And I like to make people understand that when you talk about your 1%ers, that's what they came from.
Yeah.
the inception of an industry, you know, going from agricultural to information age, your Bill Gates. We're talking about your Morgans, your Oppenheimers. These are the people that created something at the beginning of an industry and became industry leaders. And these things have withstood them from test of time and it created generational wealth. We have that opportunity now to do the exact same thing.
Now, you're talking we're
talking about producing our own plant.
Okay.
Producing our own plant and doing a vertical operation, but sharing it as a team, as a culture, because this is a culture of ours that I think we should be taking advantage of it as a team.
Well, I think what we're looking at is the economic empowerment that it can give to us as a whole, as a people.
Okay.
And that's where you're really going. And how do we play a part of that in this new industry? One of the things they've done thus far that has prevented us of being a part of any industry is by criminalizing us and giving us these criminal records. Right. So one of the biggest things that's happening right here in New York State is the pushback of having the offenders participating in the industry coming out the gate.
Okay.
A lot of other states did not do that. They tried to address it, but they didn't get it right. New York State, I believe, has to set the example. And the reason why we must do that here is because New York State is the city and state that has the most people incarcerated for marijuana.
Right.
So it would only be the right thing to do to set the tone and the benchmark of how to really move this forward when it comes to what they call social equity, reparations.
Right. Exactly.
How do we give back to those that have been affected the most?
I think the governor is talking about expunging the records.
Well, yes, currently there's a bill, S157, that's in legislation right now. I would like to tell everyone to please be aware of this bill, follow up on it. You need to start going up to legislations, writing in, signing petitions to make sure that we play a part of it and have our voice. And in that bill, this is where they're talking about the expungement of records. To ensure that people that have been decimated by the war on drugs can be a part of the industry. We're also talking about removing the application fee because that's a big hinder for people of color or people that's at a disadvantage when it comes to financial security, because currently to apply for the application here is $250,000. So that's a huge barrier for the average individual. So, and not only is that the application fee, but then $50,000 that is non-refundable. So how many of us could pay $250,000 to fill out an application that may not get selected? And then once again, the application process has been thus far a lottery system where they select only 5 individuals. So in the past several years that they have legalized marijuana, they've only allocated 10 licenses, 5 per year.
That's totally corrupt.
Exactly.
Totally corrupt.
That's why we're talking about it. It has to be a full-fledged effort by all of us who see this opportunity in front of us. And reparations is I want to be paid reparation by giving the upfront right to grow and cure myself with marijuana.
See, but by doing it that way, it's also in violation of the antitrust laws of the federal government with Teddy Roosevelt, with FDR back in the day. But this would give, as always, those select groups that got their permits and licenses, it would give them a head start. It's giving them a head start to establish themselves, build up their revenues, and they would be like the Nike of the industry. They'd be the big brand names. You're coming in maybe 5, 10 years later, nobody knows you. All right, so this is how racism, economic racism, and just being white and having the privilege of being white, you get the advancement to get way down the road before the rest of the people get a shot. And it should be called out for what it is.
Well, it's like every other opportunity that comes in front of us. Usually the 1% of the ones on top usually control and manipulate and leave us out.
Well, I must say I'm very excited to be able to say that there has been a huge outcry here in the state of New York to really stand behind ensuring that before we move this forward, that they address that.
Okay.
Right now, our top person that's leading that initiative in the House is Crystal Peoples-Stokes. and also
really?
Senator Liz Kruger. They have been working, you know, tremendously hard to make sure and actually pushing back. They're the opposition right now in House that's making sure that we do not move forward on these bills until they are addressed correctly.
Okay.
So the social justice part is very, very crucial to whether we legalize it recreational or not. I will say that I am elated that we did not pass
Do it
it
this time.
because we weren't ready.
Okay.
We just weren't ready. I mean, once again, you can see what's happening. They're scrambling. They
Right.
don't know. They're trying to figure it out. They're reaching out to other states. So until we can really define it and define it clearly, we shall not pass those bills.
And we should be first in line.
Yes, of course we should.
Okay. Now, how do we go about being first in line?
Well, I believe the best way to be first in line at this moment is just to be active in the movement.
Okay.
Okay, and that requires, like I said, just getting involved more from a legislative point, signing some of the petitions, going to some of your community district hearings, and going to some of the different the Democratic clubs meetups they have once per month. So these are the ways you get involved from more of the activist level. But then just becoming a knowledgeable consumer, because whether you want to be a patient, an investor, or an entrepreneur, you have to be re-educated on this industry currently, because what we was taught was all wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so the education is so crucial to really advancing this whole movement as well, because everyone has been misinformed. Okay, so this is the whole taboo. This is the stigma that was created and generated going back in the early 1900s and 1920s and 30s with Nixon and Operation Intercept and all these different things that they put into place to create reefer madness, to make us think that
That's a famous
this
one,
medicine was something that was harmful to us. But the government knew back then, because the government actually got a patent on hemp.
Well, we know it's used in Israel for trauma.
Well, it's used for a lot of different things, and they didn't just find this out. Let me tell you, it was the first time I really got an opening to understanding that cannabis was no longer a drug, which is what I was taught, which was what was passed down from my parents. You know, that this is something, it was a devil's drug, you know, I was, you know, getting high, it was going to make me, you know, misconduct myself, just a lot of derogatory things. While in college, I wrote a paper, a 25-page paper for a public speaking class that I was taking, and I decided to write a paper on marijuana, and the reason being was because I was, you know, participating in it at the time, and my mother had kept telling me, like, I'm going to die, I'm going to go to hell, this is a devil's drug, and you know, she just kept telling me, like, you know, and she had always instilled in me, like, if you're going to do things, you should know, educate yourself on it. So I decided that was a great opportunity to learn about this drug that I was doing at the time, and it was so unbelievable to me, because when I started to do my research, I was pointed to the American Medical Journal.
Right.
Holy cow.
What would they know about it?
Right, I'm like, wait a minute, why am I looking in the American Medical Journal? Because I'm thinking I'm reading about some bad drug and all these negative things. And at that moment, I realized that marijuana was always known as a medicine. But what I could not figure out at that time was why it was being suppressed. I was baffled. I'm like, well, if they documented in the journals, and here's all this information cited by doctors over years of study, clinical studies and everything documented, I don't understand why it's illegal. So I was confused. But at the same time, I created myself at that moment in school during class as a disruptor, because I spoke about something that no one was talking about. Especially being a young African-American girl in college, and just taking the opportunity to speak about something that I was misinformed about, and now I'm conveying truth, and I'm citing it from facts. So that was pretty disruptive, just like it is now.
The miseducation of the Negro.
Well, today, I mean, back in the 60s, I mean, you could find Acapulco Gold and you take a couple of pokes and you laugh all day.
Exactly.
It was a silly drug. I mean, it was really a happy high. But down through the years, when it became, a money maker and, gangster driven, I think in Harlem, really, they start depleting it and putting all sorts of whack weed in there to kill our youth.
That is the problem
It was
today.
planned genocide.
Well,
Our
All
people
right.
don't. I talk to the young people. I said, what are you smoking? You're not
It's not
smoking
real
marijuana.
weed. It's not
They're
real
not.
weed.
And you know what we're going to do?
I had to stop smoking because I couldn't find any decent weed.
We're going to get a lab report.
the analysis.
What it really is.
We're going to get a lab report, and we're going to get some marijuana from different neighborhoods around the city.
Oh,
I love that study. I would love to do that.
And I'm going to
Street weed
prove.
versus
Right. Because
real deal.
what our young people and all the chic people out there think they're
Yeah.
smoking is not marijuana. We know the smell of marijuana.
Yeah.
And what they're smoking is not marijuana.
Why?
What it is, they're smoking marijuana. It is, but
But
that
it's whack.
marijuana is
It's-
compounded
with
with
a whole lot of
impurities and a
garbage.
lot of pesticides.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, here's something I'll share. Another eye-opening discovery I had right away once I got into the industry and I went out to California, and I can remember smoking, when I was in college, and like you said, just remembering back then indulging in weed. It was always a happy, uplifting.
yeah.
We was giggling. It was just it was a happy thing. If it was a drug, it was a happy drug. That's all I can
That's
say. We
it.
used to laugh and giggle
Silly.
and just get silly with it, And but over the years, I remember, trying some marijuana some years back, some time ago, but it was a whole different effect that I experienced.
Yeah.
The effect was not what I wanted, and it was not what I was accustomed to, because this effect was more of a downer.
Yeah.
It knocked me out. I went to
Depression.
sleep.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand it. I remember telling young people, like, as I see some of these, millennials and Gen Zs now, and I'm like, listen, guys, if you're smoking weed and it knocks you out,
That's something
that's
wrong.
not what it's supposed to do. But let me tell you, the mindset of New Yorkers is good weed knocks you out. And that's sad, because what that says is that we've smoked bad weed all our lives, and we don't know what real good quality
That's it.
is.
That's
No
it.
point of reference. They don't have a point of.
That's it.
You smell them on the train. You get on. What is that stench? It's in their
Yeah.
clothing. That's not marijuana.
It's all planned genocide.
It's some rot gut crap that they're smoking, that they're spending their money on, wasting their money, and they don't know the effects of all the chemicals in there on their body. And that's what we're going to find
I truly think the authorities see these drug dealers coming through the system and say, yeah, we'll let you go out and sell marijuana, but I want you to sell this marijuana over here. That's whack.
Well, don't
That's
forget
killing
Nixon.
people.
Nixon and
It's
aldermen
killing people.
said on tape that they were involved in distributing drugs in the black communities.
Yeah.
Well, let's think
So-
about
Well, we know
this.
they did it with crack in the 80s.
Well,
up in the
before
West
crack.
Coast.
I'm
Okay, let's
talking back
address
in the
one of the
70s.
epidemics that we're facing right here in New York City
That
and
part.
state, and that's with this spice. That synthetic weed, that
Yeah.
spice.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what neighborhood you're from, but I live here in Harlem, uptown, and there's the train station right over there on 125th and Lexington Avenue, right
Oh,
there on
wow.
that corner. I mean, that's like
That-
Spice
that-
Haven.
that
Okay,
corner.
I never knew what it was. I just know that there's some type of pungent odor that I dislike. I couldn't identify what the scent was, but it was just a smell that I disliked it.
It wasn't-
But over the time, I've learned that that's that spice scent. But when you go over there, it's very, very, it's very, to be honest, it's scary.
It's like going into a time warp. You're going back to the 60s.
Right. To like the
Pathmark
crack
shut down
era,
and
or
left.
heroin era, like these people, they're over there kind of like,
Methadone.
they're like drugged up,
Zoned
they're
out.
half sleep,
Methadone.
they're laying on the streets, they're like, sometimes they're like, just delirious, talking to themselves. So, I mean, once again, this is something that the government has flooded into our communities.
That's the
They're in
methadone.
all the stores around there in that corner section on 125th Street, because I've seen it for years. I actually thought it was something for children. I thought it was like candy or something, because the packaging is like, it's in this packaging that's got like Pac-Mans and fruits and colorful. I always thought it was something for children, like candy.
Right.
So it's very, very, very deceitful in the way it appeals to people as well.
You got a lot
you
of
know
those
what I'm gonna
Arabs
do?
selling it.
I'm going to
over
go
there.
to the, I'm going to go to the scientific analysis of cannabis. Play the one we played from the doctor from Israel. He's been studying cannabis for 50 years, and they've really broken it down on what it does to the brain, and how we produce THC in the brain, actually. All right? You have that piece? The last one we read. Remember the one?
Is CBD the hemp oil, or is that
Yeah.
something else?
CBD from cannabis does. They have to genetically modify THC out of, CBD from the cannabis plant, whereas in the hemp plant, they don't. Is this on the mic?
Oh, we're still on.
Okay, light? Okay.
You have the rolling?
All right, so I'm just trying to get clarification while we're waiting.
Okay.
The hemp oil which Stone was talking about,
You mean Simpson?
Simpson
Rick Simpson.
was making and processing. Is that marketed, the hemp oil?
Well, yes. Well, Rick Simpson oil is marketing. That is one of the best things in the marketplace. Currently not legal in the state of New York, though. Rick Simpson oil is very, very high concentrations of THC. Because to really
Speak a
get
little
the
louder.
true effects that you need, to really receive the true medicinal effects from the Rick Simpson oil, it's something that's called, it's based on a ratio where you need both CBD and THC. Because just like everything in its natural form, cannabis, the plant in its natural form, consists of both compounds. But right now, due to state legalities, we have to modify the plant to meet some of the state guidelines. Okay?
No, the one we
for the
ran on.
distribution purposes within that state. So right now in New York State, you can only have a certain percentage of THC.
How
Rick
THC
Simpson
works. At the
products.
beginning, we worked on the
All right,
isolation,
we'll just use this for a rough
elucidation,
filtering to begin with.
and synthesis of both the active compound of many of the other compounds.
After years of working on this, Dr. Mashulam was able
I've
to
used ether, I've
successfully
used naphtha,
isolate the
and I've used
psychoactive
isopropyl alcohol.
component
I've never used
inside of
acetone, but I've been
cannabis
told that
called
acetone would actually work very well too.
delta-9-tetrahydrocannabinol,
And the other thing people should know about
along with
solvents,
many other
when you have the
chemical
proper solvent,
compounds of
it
the
should be
plant,
clear like water
such
to
as
begin with,
cannabidiol.
and then
It's rich. It's THC rich, whereas hemp has a lot less. So hemp is the safe zone right now when you're creating any type of product. If you want it to be marketable across states, because hemp meets the guidelines.
Now, there are federal guidelines also on marijuana.
Just like
Thank you.
alcohol.
Excuse me for the interruption. We're live from Manhattan Neighborhood Network. But back to the conversation. I just want to show you the medical analysis of cannabis. Now, play this. This is from a doctor in Israel. All right, play that piece for us now. All right? We'll be right back at you in a minute.
So how can all of these cases of marijuana healing medical conditions be explained from a scientific point of view? Well, perhaps, just maybe, we are wired for weed, so to speak, and there's a system in our body that combines to cannabis on a molecular level. To answer that question, along with many others, we're heading to Israel, a country who has been a pioneer in the cannabis research field. This is Dr. Meshulam, the world's leading expert in this field and the grandfather of the medical marijuana movement. It was over 50 years ago that he first isolated THC and CBD, the active and inactive components in marijuana. And today, it is his original work that has led to many groundbreaking advancements in the medical cannabis field.
When we started working exactly 50 years ago on cannabis, very little work was being done. People had looked into it, but didn't really know how THC works. At the beginning, we worked on the isolation, structure elucidation, and synthesis of both the active compound of many of the other compounds.
After years of working on this, Dr. Meshulam was able to successfully isolate the psychoactive component inside of cannabis called delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, along with many other chemical compounds of the plant, such as cannabidiol.
There are also other compounds there, and we had to devise methods for their preparation. So this took a few years.
Dozens of researchers around the world knew that THC indeed affected the user and made them feel high. But researchers didn't know how this process actually happened. It wasn't until 1988 that a U.S. researcher named Alan Howlett first suggested that there might be a receptor, something actually inside the brain, that THC binds to on a molecular level, and that causes a series of reactions to start. This idea of having a receptor inside the human body that is activated by THC was confirmed years later by a group at the National Institute of Health in the U.S. This first receptor was located inside the brain, and they called it CB1. Then, in 1993, CB2, the second cannabinoid receptor, was also characterized. Shortly after the discovery of CB1 and CB2, Dr. Meshulam identified anandamide, the body's very own produced form of THC.
In the early 90s, 1992 and later, we identified two compounds that are endogenous. They're present in the brain, they're present in the body, they activate the cannabinoid receptor. Actually, there are two receptors. They are of extreme importance. The first compound we identified, we called it anandamide.
Anandamide is a naturally produced molecular messenger molecule called an endocannabinoid. Anandamide has a three-dimensional structure that THC mimics. Think of them as organic cousins, if you will. Although one comes from the plant and the other is produced in our bodies, their effects on the brain are fundamentally the same.
Then later we discovered another compound, and these two compounds are the main compounds that stimulate the two receptors.
This they called 2-AG. The discovery of 2-AG was very important in that it established the existence of a cannabinoid system within the human body. So, to put it all together, the cannabinoid receptors called CB1 found in the brain, plus the CB2 receptor in the immune system, along with the endocannabinoids called anandamide and 2-AG, and all the other molecules involved, are a part of a relatively new body system that researchers are calling the endocannabinoid system. Today, it's the discovery of the new endocannabinoid system that researchers are continuing to study. The belief is that this new system, similar to a nervous system or pulmonary one, could be the key to keeping the body healthy.
I just laid out the scientific part so you know how serious this is. With this groundbreaking You know, this is something that's been studied in Israel for 50 years, as we just found out. But it's exciting to know that finally in Harlem we can do something revolutionary with something that's been a dark cloud over us, smoking pot, the devil's weed, and all this other stuff. And then we can open up and have fun again. If we legalize it and we can grow the proper plants, and we know we got good weed out there, so we'll advertise it. Here's the giggle weed. You want to stay happy? You want to cure yourself? If we make enough money on selling the giggle weed, we could pass out free hemp oil to people and cure our community of all these other psychological problems that we have just being black in America. And you're leading the charge, and I'm ready to grab a team.
It's very exciting, like I said, to be in the forefront of something that's new and evolving. Being a person that's really kind of, as I say, take the bull by the horns, and being a pioneer, going against the odds, breaking the barriers, but most importantly, creating the conversation.
Okay.
Allowing people to understand that this is a powerful plant.
Okay.
It is a powerful plant. And not only does this power bring medicinal benefits, but it also brings financial wealth.
Amen.
I tell everyone now, in the green rush, money does grow on trees, guys. It really does.
Oh, I like
That's
that.
my slogan. In the green rush, money does grow on trees. So it's about educating ourselves, making sure we don't get left behind. And most importantly, being able to open up our minds to things that are new. See, one of the biggest problems I find with a lot of individuals that I interact with, especially when we're going into the baby boomer generation, it's more about not having the ability to evolve, not being able to adapt. Because if you can adapt, you'll be able to evolve. And that requires right now understanding that this is no longer a black market business. This is a global market.
That's right.
This is a global market that we're talking about.
That's right.
So we have to reprogram our mindsets. We have to really take in as much as possible, because in order for me to do what I'm doing now, I had to do a lot of studying. I had to do a lot of interacting with people. I had to put myself out there.
Okay.
I had to take that initiative.
You've been doing this how long now?
Well, I've been doing this full time now for 6 years.
Is it 6 years?
6 years.
Wow.
Like, you know, I was doing it under kind of like off the radar on the side. But, well, I take that back. I've been in the business for 6 years, and I've been doing it full time now for 4 years, full time. As I say, I came out the closet.
Okay.
And now just being in the forefront of this industry and being able to have open dialogue, seeing cannabis ads on television, hearing about people talking about it on the radio, it really makes me see that we're creating and breaking barriers, we're moving strides, and it's at a tailwind. It's at tailwind speeds. The biggest thing we must do right now is act.
Okay.
Act, whether it's go get the information, act if it's get education because you want to get in the industry. We have to act, and we have to act fast. There's a lot of different things to do. Like I say, go to your different meetup groups. We just launched the Cannabis Learning Center in Brooklyn on Nostrand Avenue. This is a safe space for people to come and receive education and training.
I know the house was packed.
Yeah, well, you know what?
Nostrand Avenue.
Well, you know, we're targeted, and we want to go into some of these underserved communities because, once again, they're kind of left behind. They're just finding out. It's been legal in New York. The Compassionate Care Act started in 2014.
5 years ago.
Compassionate
5 years
Care
ago.
Act?
Yeah, that's when it went legal. When we legalized marijuana in New York State for medicinal purposes,
Oh, for
it's
medicinal,
called
okay.
the Compassionate Care Act, and
Okay.
it was passed in 2014. So 5 years later,
How
the
many people know
underserved
that?
communities are now hearing about it. So once again, we're still a little left out.
Now,
And that's
wait,
why.
You're telling me that you can get a medical marijuana legally in New York?
Since 2014, Compassionate Care Act.
How come I didn't know that?
Well, because that's lack of information.
Wow.
Things not being publicized, not being able to
So
talk
I've got
about
cancer. How do I go about getting a medical marijuana card?
it. Okay, well, first of all, right now there's a number
can
of
come
different
to you?
ways. Well, of course, you can always come to me. I've
Okay.
created a program called Golden Hands. That program allows you to come in and get education. We also have partnered with some licensed practitioners.
Okay.
Because I'm not a practitioner, guys. I'm an educator and an activist and advisor. So what
we
I do
have
is
your website up there. Now, all you people know that if you want to get involved here, and I'm going to join Golden Hands, you know, because I'm a senior. Oh, you're a senior now, too.
Yeah, what can I
He
say?
just turned 70 in this guy.
Oh, my.
Yeah, you get older, you don't get old. All right?
You get wiser.
And wiser.
That's right. That's right.
He just turned.
So we have
My
Golden
junior,
Hands.
my younger brother.
Hey, Pops.
Actually, I'm older than him.
So we have Golden Hands for the baby boomers. That's a program, and it's actually moving around throughout the city. So go to the website to find out more information. We are actually participating with a lot of community-based organizations. Once again, that's a way to reach the underserved elders in the community. In addition to that, we also have the Cannabis Learning Center, which is our brick and mortar location that we launched. We did our open house in April, and it's in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, in Nostrand, on Nostrand Avenue. And it's a safe space for you to go to receive education, information, and training. But we're going to give special consideration to youth offenders and to drug offenders and to family members by people that have been decimated by the war on drugs. So we're very excited about that. You know, it's a incubator program at this moment that we're looking to grow and really scale it and take it nationwide, going into the underserved communities.
What are you saying? It's like somebody went to jail for selling pot, marijuana. They get out of jail and they suddenly go into an industry they were locked up for?
Of course. And now let's talk about that.
And they'll be shown preference?
Well, yes, that's one of the things that's actually happened in that bill that I mentioned to you. That's up in legislation. They want to make sure that they give special consideration to the offenders. Now, I want to talk about that a little bit because sometimes, you know, we say, be careful what you ask for. And I think it's very important for the public and especially minorities to understand, because sometimes when we hear, give us something free, we just think it's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing free is good.
Nothing free is great.
Okay.
And what we have to understand, or what they didn't address in California, here's the situation. Sounds good, theoretically. If you've been an offender, if you've been incarcerated, and you want to get into the industry, we're going to open up the gates. Not only are we going to allow you to be a part of the industry, but we're going to give you some of the resources to get you started, okay? And some of those things, of course, mainly would be some capital. That's what we need. And then some educational training, of course. However, they really didn't address it in that manner. So what they did was they put in these different measures saying that we're going to give you some funding, we're going to let you be in the industry. However, let's take this individual who has been incarcerated for however much of their lives, and let's look at them as a business owner or operator, okay? The likelihood of someone succeeding in operating a business who has never had any type of official training or education is slim to none.
Right.
Of course.
So let's look at this, guys. Now, the program, that sounds good. Let's give these guys the money and the funding and a little bit of the resources needed to get going.
Program to fail.
But now, let's look about, because you got to remember now, if they're giving it to us through the government, it's an implemented program, that program is really quantified based on measurements and outcomes. So now, in order for that program to continue to be funded, it must be successful.
Yeah.
Are we close to closing? I'm looking at the camera.
Okay. So I just want to make us aware that we have to understand that we need to implement an entire ecosystem that
Thank you for coming.
talks about training, education, but we have to give them a lot of the
loves the God in
fundamental
you, and
schools.
stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist experience.
Well, we have another minute for the Bronx.
Power to the people. Amen.
We still have another minute. One more minute. Yeah.
Should I keep talking?
Yeah.
No, I'm over the minute yet.
What about, don't you have a
We'll catch
minute
him
left?
next time. Don't worry, next time.
That's it.
Yeah.
We're off.
You got to give me the key.
We're
to the
on.
tap.
Well, yeah, we're still on.
We're off.
Oh, we're off?
Are we
Yeah.
off or on? I'm confused.
So Bronx went off and, Queens went off and you didn't even say goodnight?
I didn't
okay.
catch. Yeah, that's.
Okay. You was looking at your time over there. You
I
should-
was looking at it, and it was 58 something.
Yeah, because that's,
Yeah, you
Oh,
should.
yeah,
Next time, I
59.
can always keep me on the timer. I got to pay attention.
I usually hit it at
yeah, but the
somebody
count,
give you
the
that
count
one.
is over there. This is red, that's green.
I got to tell you, like, I was so excited to do this because I've never done a live show taping, and I want to implement that into my program.
Huh?
See,
We're still on?
we're still on. Yes.
Oh, we're still on.
The God in me loves the God in you.
The God in me loves the God in me. Stay tuned for more. Power to the people.
Remember, in the green
6
rush, money
o'clock.
does grow on trees.
We go off at 58.
So, hemp oil
We go off at
is
58.
illegal to purchase in New
No,
York.
no, hemp oil is not illegal to purchase anywhere. Remember what I told you? Hemp is the safe zone.
Okay.
Okay.